The first sound Logan Miller heard that cold November morning in 1872 was his horse whinnying nervously in the barn, followed by something falling and clattering against the wooden floor. He grabbed his rifle from above the cabin door and moved quickly through the pre-dawn darkness toward the weathered structure that stood 50 yards from his home. His breath formed white clouds in the frigid Montana air as he approached with practiced silence, the kind of stealth he had learned during his years trapping in the mountains, before settling on this remote piece of land outside Virginia City. Logan pushed the barn door open slowly, letting pale moonlight spill across the hay-strewn floor. His mare stamped her hooves and tossed her head toward the back corner where the feed was stored. He raised the rifle and moved forward, his eyes adjusting to the dimness. "Come out," he said firmly. "I know you are in here." Nothing stirred except the horse's tail swishing back and forth. Logan took another step forward, his boots crunching on the loose hay. Then he saw it, a small form huddled behind a stack of grain sacks, trembling visibly even from 10 feet away. "I said come out." He lowered the rifle slightly when he realized the intruder was smaller than he had expected. A thief maybe, or some ranch hand looking for a place to sleep. The figure slowly stood, and Logan's breath caught in his throat. It was a young woman, probably no more than 20 years old, with long dark hair tangled with bits of hay and a face so pale she looked like she might faint at any moment. Her dress was torn at the hem and covered in dirt and what looked like dried blood. She held her hands up in front of her, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. "Please," she whispered, "please do not hurt me. I will leave. I just needed somewhere warm for the night." Logan lowered the rifle completely and leaned it against a post. "You are hurt." "No," she said quickly, then contradicted herself by swaying on her feet and grabbing the wall for support. He moved forward instinctively, catching her elbow as her knees buckled. Up close, he could see the bruises on her face, the split lip that had barely begun to heal, and the way she flinched when he touched her arm. "Easy now," Logan said, gentling his voice the way he did with spooked animals. "I am not going to hurt you, but you need to tell me what happened." She looked up at him with wide hazel eyes that held more fear than he had ever seen in another human being. For a long moment, she just stared at him as if trying to decide whether she could trust this mountain man who stood well over 6 feet tall with a thick beard and hands rough from years of hard work. "My name is Clara Anderson," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "And if you send me back, he will kill me this time." Logan felt something shift in his chest at those words. He had been alone on this property for 3 years, ever since he had given up the wandering life of a trapper and decided to try his hand at ranching. He spoke to people in town maybe once a month when he went for supplies, and he had convinced himself that solitude was what he wanted. But standing here in his barn with this terrified young woman who clearly had nowhere else to go, he realized how empty his life had become. "Who will kill you?" he asked. Clara's eyes filled with tears and she wrapped her arms around herself. "My husband, Robert Anderson. He owns the saloon in Nevada City. Everyone thinks he is such a fine gentleman, but behind closed doors he is a monster." She started to cry then, great shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Logan stood there awkwardly for a moment before gently guiding her to sit on a hay bale. He found an old blanket and draped it around her shoulders. "How long have you been running?" 3 days, Clara said between sobs. "I waited until he passed out drunk, and then I took one of his horses and just rode. I did not even know where I was going, I just had to get away." "Why come here? This is miles from Nevada City." She looked up at him with those haunted eyes. "The horse went lame yesterday morning. I had to leave it and walk. When I saw your barn last night, I was so tired I could not go any farther. I thought I could rest for a few hours and then move on before you noticed." Logan studied her for a long moment. He had never been one to get involved in other people's problems, but something about this young woman made him want to help. Maybe it was the way she tried to stop crying and straighten her spine even though she was clearly exhausted and terrified. Maybe it was the fact that she reminded him of a wounded bird he had once found in the mountains, fierce and fragile at the same time. "You are safe here," he said finally. "Let me bring you into the house where it is warmer." Clara shook her head violently. "I cannot impose on you like that. You do not know me, and if Robert finds out you helped me, he will come after you too. He has friends, dangerous men who do whatever he asks." "I have handled dangerous men before," Logan said, and there was something in his voice that made her believe him. "Come on now. You need food and rest, and then we can figure out what to do next." She hesitated for another moment before nodding slowly and letting him help her to her feet. They walked across the frozen ground to his cabin, and Logan pushed open the door to reveal a simple but clean space with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table, and a bed in one corner covered with thick furs. "You take the bed," Logan said, moving to stoke the fire back to life. "I will sleep out here by the hearth." "I cannot take your bed," Clara protested weakly, but she was already swaying on her feet again. "You can and you will." He guided her to the bed and helped her sit down. "When did you last eat?" She thought about it for a moment, her brow furrowing. "Yesterday morning, I think. I found some berries along the road." Logan shook his head and went to his small pantry, pulling out bread, dried meat, and a jar of preserves his neighbor had given him months ago. He put together a simple meal and brought it to her along with a cup of water from the pump. Clara ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger as her body realized it was finally being fed. Logan busied himself with the fire and making coffee, trying not to stare at her but finding his eyes drawn back to her face again and again. Even with the bruises and the exhaustion, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "How old are you?" he asked, then immediately wondered if that was too personal a question. 21, Clara said between bites. "I will be 22 in January, and you?" 27. Logan poured himself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, giving her space. "How long were you married to this man?" Her face darkened. 2 years. My father owed him money, gambling debts. Robert said he would forgive the debt if I married him. I was 19 and stupid enough to think that meant he cared about me." She laughed bitterly. "I realized my mistake on our wedding night when he hit me for the first time." Logan's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "Your father let you marry him knowing he was dangerous." "My father died 6 months after the wedding, fell off his horse drunk." Clara set down the food, her appetite suddenly gone. "Robert got worse after that. He said I was his property now and he could do whatever he wanted with me. The last time, 3 nights ago, he beat me so badly I thought I was going to die. That is when I knew I had to run, even if it meant dying on the road somewhere. At least then it would be on my own terms." The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. Logan studied this young woman who had somehow ended up in his barn, this stranger who was telling him things that made him want to ride to Nevada City and teach Robert Anderson what it felt like to be helpless and hurt. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said finally. "I do not get many visitors, and my nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. You will be safe while you heal and figure out your next move." Clara's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they seemed to be tears of relief rather than fear. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Logan considered the question. Why was he offering to harbor a runaway wife when it could bring him nothing but trouble? He had spent years avoiding complications, keeping to himself, building a life that required no one else. But looking at Clara, seeing the hope and fear warring in her expression, he knew he could not turn her away. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "Now finish eating and get some rest. We can talk more when you have slept." Clara nodded and did as he suggested, finishing the simple meal before lying back on the bed. She was asleep within minutes, her body finally surrendering to the exhaustion it had been fighting for days. Logan sat by the fire for a long time, drinking his coffee and thinking about what he had just agreed to do. He was harboring another man's wife, which could get him arrested or worse in some places. Robert Anderson sounded like the kind of man who would not let his property go without a fight, and if he had dangerous friends, Logan might be bringing a world of trouble down on his quiet life. But when he glanced over at the sleeping woman in his bed, something in his chest tightened in a way he had never felt before. He had been alone so long he had forgotten what it was like to care about another person's well-being. Now, in the space of an hour, this Clara Anderson had changed something fundamental in him. He would protect her, he decided. Whatever it took. The next 3 days passed in a strange sort of domestic routine that neither of them quite knew how to navigate. Clara slept most of the first day and night, her body recovering from the ordeal of her escape. When she finally woke properly on the second morning, Logan had breakfast waiting and a basin of warm water so she could wash. "Thank you," she said quietly, accepting the food. "I do not know how to repay you for your kindness." "No repayment needed." Logan sat across from her at the table, his own plate in front of him. "Do you have family anywhere? People who might take you in?" Clara shook her head. "My mother died when I was young and my father was an only child. I have a cousin in California, but I have not seen her in years. I do not even know if she is still there." "What about friends?" "Robert did not let me have friends." Her voice was flat. "He said other women were a bad influence, that they would fill my head with ideas about leaving him. The only people I saw regularly were the customers at the saloon, and none of them would risk crossing Robert to help me." Logan felt that surge of anger again at the thought of this man who had isolated and terrorized a young woman for 2 years. "Then you will stay here until you are strong enough to make a real plan. Spring would be a better time to travel anyway, if you decide to try reaching your cousin." Clara looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "You would really let me stay here that long?" "But winter is months away from ending. You barely know me." "I know enough." Logan stood and carried his plate to the basin. "I know you are brave enough to risk everything to escape a bad situation. I know you are resourceful enough to have made it this far on your own. That is more than I need to know." Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm. Logan did his usual work around the property, tending to his small herd of cattle, chopping wood, and maintaining the buildings before the deep winter set in. Clara rested and healed, the bruises on her face slowly fading from purple to yellow-green. She insisted on helping around the cabin, cooking meals and mending his clothes, and Logan found himself looking forward to coming back to a warm house and the smell of something baking. They talked in the evenings by the fire, sharing stories about their lives. Logan told her about growing up in Missouri, how he had come west as a young man looking for adventure and freedom. He spoke of his years trapping in the mountains, the harsh winters and beautiful summers, the sense of being part of something vast and wild. Clara told him about her childhood in Nevada City, about her mother who had loved to sing and her father who had been kind but weak. She spoke of the dreams she had once had of traveling and seeing the ocean, dreams that had died when she married Robert Anderson. "I used to think about just walking away," she confessed one night as they sat on opposite sides of the fireplace. "Even before it got really bad, I would dream about disappearing and starting over somewhere new. But I was too afraid. Where would I go? How would I survive? And Robert always said that if I left, he would find me and make me sorry I had ever been born. He will not find you here, Logan said with quiet certainty. And even if he does, he will have to go through me first. Clara looked at him across the firelight, and something in her expression made his heart beat faster. Why are you doing this? Really? You could have turned me away, sent me back to town. Most men would not want to get involved. Logan met her gaze steadily. Most men should do better then. The days grew colder as November turned into December. Snow fell heavy and thick, blanketing the land in white and making travel difficult. Logan was secretly glad for it, because it meant anyone trying to track Clara would have a hard time making it out to his property. He went to town only once for supplies, and he listened carefully to the gossip in the general store. No one mentioned Robert Anderson or a missing wife, which meant either the man was looking quietly or he had decided not to look at all. Logan hoped it was the latter, but prepared for the former. He cleaned his rifle and pistol, checked his ammunition, and made sure the cabin was secure. Clara noticed his preparations, but said nothing, though he caught her watching him sometimes with a mixture of gratitude and something else he could not quite identify. Christmas approached, and Logan realized with some surprise that he was actually looking forward to it. He had not celebrated the holiday in years, seeing no point when he was alone. But now, with Clara in his home, he found himself wanting to make the day special. He rode out into the woods and cut down a small pine tree, dragging it back to the cabin and setting it up in the corner. Clara's face lit up when she saw it, the first real smile he had seen from her since she arrived. "I have not had a Christmas tree since I was a girl," she said, running her hand over the branches. "My mother used to make decorations from whatever we had on hand." "We can do the same," Logan said. Together, they spent an evening cutting shapes from paper and tying them to the branches with thread. It was a simple tree, nothing like the fancy ones he had heard wealthy families had in their homes back east, but seeing Clara's joy made it perfect. On Christmas morning, Logan surprised her with a gift, a new dress he had bought in town, made of soft blue fabric that matched her eyes. She stared at it in shock, her hands trembling as she held it up. "You should not have spent your money on me," she whispered, but her eyes were shining. "You needed something better than that torn dress," Logan said gruffly, embarrassed by her reaction. "It is nothing fancy. It is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me." Clara looked up at him, and there were tears running down her cheeks. "Robert never gave me gifts. He said I did not deserve them." Logan felt something crack open inside his chest. He reached out without thinking and brushed away one of her tears with his thumb. "You deserve good things, Clara. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect." They stood there for a long moment, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. Then Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug, burying her face against his chest. "Thank you," she said, her voice muffled by his shirt. "Thank you for everything." Logan held her carefully, afraid to squeeze too tight, afraid to let her see how much this simple embrace affected him. He had started to care for her, he realized. Somewhere between pulling her out of his barn and standing here with her in his arms on Christmas morning, he had developed feelings that went far beyond simple compassion for someone in need. He was falling in love with her. The realization should have scared him. She was technically still married to another man, even if that man was a monster. She was vulnerable and dependent on his help, which meant any romantic feelings would be inappropriate and potentially manipulative. But standing there with Clara in his arms, Logan could not bring himself to regret what he was feeling. He just held her and let himself enjoy this one moment of connection. Clara pulled back after a minute, wiping her eyes and laughing shakily. "Look at me, crying on Christmas morning. "You must think I am so foolish." "I think you are brave and strong," Logan said honestly. "I think any man would be lucky to have you in his life." She looked at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Logan, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I have been thinking a lot these past weeks about my life and what I want for the future." Clara took a deep breath. "I know I cannot stay here forever, that I am imposing on your hospitality, but I do not want to leave, not because I am still afraid of Robert, though I am, but because I have been happier here in these few weeks than I was in years with him. You make me feel safe and valued, and She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Logan's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "You what?" "I have feelings for you," Clara said in a rush. "I know it is too soon and probably wrong, and you probably think I am just confused because you saved me. But I wake up every morning looking forward to seeing you, and I go to sleep thinking about our conversations. You have shown me what it means to be treated well, and I find myself wanting more than just your protection. I want your companionship. I want—" She broke off again, her face flushing red. Logan reached out and took her hands in his rough fingers gentle against her skin. "I have feelings for you too, Clara. I have been fighting them because I did not want to take advantage of your situation. But the truth is that having you here has made me realize how lonely I was before. You have brought light into my life, and I do not want to lose that." Clara's face transformed with joy and she squeezed his hands. "Really? You truly care for me, more than I should, probably." Logan smiled, and it felt strange because he realized it had been a long time since he had smiled like this, open and genuine. "But I cannot seem to help it." "Then what do we do?" "I am still married to Robert, at least legally. Even out here, that matters." Logan had been thinking about this problem for weeks now, turning it over in his mind during the long hours of work. "We have a few options. You could go to California, start fresh where no one knows you. Or you could stay here, and we could claim you are my cousin visiting from back east if anyone asks. Eventually, Robert might give up looking, or he might die. Men like him tend to make enemies. And when enough time has passed, we could consider making this arrangement more permanent." "What if I want to make it permanent now?" Clara asked quietly. "What if I do not want to wait years for a man I hate to maybe die so I can finally be free?" "What are you saying?" She took a deep breath. "I am saying that in the eyes of God, my marriage to Robert ended the first time he hit me. I do not care what the law says. I am saying that I want to build a life here with you if you will have me. Not as your cousin or your guest, but as your partner, your wife, in every way that matters." Logan stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Are you sure? Once you make that choice, there is no going back. If Robert does come looking, if anyone finds out, there could be serious consequences." "I am sure." Clara's voice was steady now, all hesitation gone. "I spent 2 years in a prison of fear and pain. I will not spend the rest of my life hiding and running. You have given me a chance at happiness, and I want to take it. The question is, do you want the same thing?" Logan did not even have to think about his answer. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, and finally her lips in a gentle, tender kiss that held all the feelings he had been holding back. Clara kissed him back with equal tenderness, her arms wrapping around his neck as if she never wanted to let go. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard and smiling. "I want you to stay," Logan said firmly. "Not as my guest or my ward, but as my partner. We will face whatever comes together." "Together," Clara agreed and kissed him again. The rest of the winter passed in a blur of happiness that Logan had never imagined possible. He and Clara settled into life as partners, sharing the work of the ranch and the simple pleasures of domestic life. They cooked together, worked together, and spent the long evenings talking and planning for the future. Clara proved to be remarkably capable, adapting quickly to the demands of ranch life. She learned to tend the cattle, milk the cow Logan had acquired, and even helped with some of the heavier chores when needed. Logan found himself constantly surprised by her strength and resilience, the way she threw herself into this new life with determination and joy. They slept in the same bed now, holding each other through the cold nights, and Logan discovered a tenderness in himself he had not known existed. He was careful with Clara, always conscious of what she had endured with Robert, and she responded to his gentleness with increasing confidence and affection. In late January, they celebrated her 22nd birthday with a cake Clara baked herself and a pair of warm gloves Logan had made from deerskin. She cried happy tears and told him it was the best birthday she had ever had. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said that night as they lay together by the fire. "Sometimes I wake up afraid it is all a dream and I am going to find myself back in that saloon with Robert's hands around my throat." Logan pulled her closer. "This is real." "I am real and I am not going anywhere. Promise me something," Clara said, looking up at him. "Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, we will face it together. If Robert comes, if there is trouble with the law, whatever it is, we do not run from it. We stand our ground and fight for what we have built here." Logan kissed the top of her head. "I promise. We are in this together, Clara, for better or worse." Spring came slowly to Montana, the snow melting in patches and revealing the brown earth beneath. Logan began preparing for the planting season, expanding his small garden and making plans to increase his cattle herd. Clara worked beside him, her face tanned from the sun and her hands growing calloused from the work. They were happy, truly happy, and Logan sometimes had to stop and marvel at how much his life had changed in just a few months. The lonely mountain man who had wanted nothing but solitude had become someone who could not imagine life without the woman who had hidden in his barn. It was in early April that their peace was shattered. Logan had gone to town for supplies, something he did only reluctantly now, because he hated leaving Clara alone even for a few hours. He was loading his wagon outside the general store when he overheard two men talking nearby. "I heard Robert Anderson is offering a reward for information about his wife," one of them said. $500 for anyone who can tell him where she is." "That is a lot of money," the second man replied. "What did she do? Steal from him? Ran off, apparently. He has been looking for her since last fall. Says she is sick in the head and needs to come home for her own safety." Logan felt his blood run cold. He quickly finished loading the wagon and started the long drive back to his property, his mind racing. $500 was enough money to tempt even honest men, and if Robert was making his search known this widely, it meant he had not given up. He needed to warn Clara, needed to prepare for the possibility that someone might put together the timing of her disappearance and his sudden tendency to avoid town. They had been careful, but not careful enough if Robert was spreading money around. When he pulled up to the cabin, Clara came out to greet him with a smile that faded as soon as she saw his expression. "What is wrong?" she asked immediately. Logan helped her carry the supplies inside before telling her what he had heard. He watched the color drain from her face and hated himself for taking away her peace of mind. "He is still looking for me," she said quietly. "After all this time. Men like him do not like losing what they consider theirs." Logan took her hands. "But we are not going to panic. We are going to be smart about this. If anyone comes around asking questions, you are my cousin from Missouri, visiting to help with the ranch. We stick to that story no matter what." Clara nodded, but he could see the fear creeping back into her eyes, the same fear he had seen that first night in the barn. What if someone recognizes me? What if he finds us? Then I will handle it. Logan's voice was firm. I meant what I said, Clara. I will protect you. But you have to trust me. I do trust you. She wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. I am just so afraid of losing this, of losing you. You are not going to lose me. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. We have come too far to let him destroy what we have built. For a few weeks, nothing happened. Logan stayed alert, kept his rifle close, and avoided town entirely. Clara tried to return to their normal routine, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she startled at unexpected sounds. Then one afternoon in late April, a rider appeared on the horizon. Logan saw him coming and immediately sent Clara into the cabin with instructions to stay inside and keep away from the windows. He met the rider outside, his hand resting casually on the pistol at his hip. The man who dismounted was well-dressed, with slicked-back hair and the look of someone who spent more time in saloons than on horseback. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly. "My name is Thomas Wright. I work for Robert Anderson over in Nevada City. I am looking for his wife, Clara. I was told you might have seen her." Logan kept his expression neutral. "I do not know anyone by that name. What makes you think she would be out here? We have been tracking her movements since she left last November. A horse was found lame not far from here, and you were in town around that time. Seemed like too much of a coincidence." Thomas's smile never wavered. "Mr. Anderson is very concerned about his wife's well-being. She is fragile, you understand, and he worries she might have come to harm. As I said, I have not seen anyone matching that description." Logan crossed his arms. "I live alone out here, and I do not get many visitors." Thomas looked past him toward the cabin, and Logan shifted to block his view. "You sure about that?" "Mr. Anderson is offering a generous reward for information. $500 is a lot of money for a man living on a small ranch like this." "I am sure." Logan's voice hardened. "Now, if that is all, I have work to do. Of course." Thomas mounted his horse but made no move to leave immediately. "You know, Mr. Anderson is a powerful man with powerful friends. If someone was hiding his wife, that person would be making a very serious mistake. Interfering in a marriage is a crime, after all. A man could end up in jail or worse. I will keep that in mind." Logan's hand moved closer to his pistol. "Have a safe ride back to Nevada City." Thomas finally turned his horse and rode away, but not before giving the cabin one last long look. Logan stayed outside until the man was out of sight, then hurried inside to find Clara standing by the window, her face white as snow. "He knows I am here," she said. "Robert knows." Maybe, maybe not. Thomas was fishing for information, trying to scare me into giving something away. Logan pulled her into his arms. "But you were right that we cannot keep running and hiding. We need to deal with this head-on." "What do you mean?" Logan had been thinking about this possibility for weeks, ever since he first heard about the reward. "I mean we go to the law, the real law, not whoever Robert has in his pocket in Nevada City. We go to the territorial marshal and we tell them everything about the abuse, about your escape, about the threats. We make your case legal and official." Clara shook her head frantically. "They will never believe me over him. He is respected in Nevada City. I am just a woman who ran away from her husband. They will force me to go back. Not if we have evidence. Not if we make it clear that returning you to him would be sentencing you to death." Logan took her face in his hands, making her look at him. "I know you are scared, but hiding forever is not a life. We fight this the right way with the law on our side, and if the law fails us, then we will figure out something else. But we try this first." Clara searched his face for a long moment before finally nodding. "All right, We do it together." 2 days later, they rode to Virginia City and asked to speak with Marshal John Hayes, a man Logan had met a few times and seemed like he might be fair. Hayes was in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened carefully as Clara told her story, showing him the faded scars on her arms and the documentation Logan had gotten from the town doctor confirming old injuries. "This is a serious accusation," Hayes said when she finished. "Marriage law is complicated, and interfering in a domestic situation can bring charges against Mr. Miller here." "So you are saying I should go back to a man who beat me regularly?" Clara's voice shook but held steady. "That I should just accept being someone's property to abuse as he sees fit? I am saying the law is not always on the side of justice, especially when it comes to matters between husband and wife." Hayes sighed and rubbed his face. "But I am also saying that I believe you, Mrs. Anderson. I have heard rumors about your husband, about other women who worked at his saloon and ended up hurt. Nothing I could ever prove, but enough to make me wonder." "So what can we do?" Logan asked. Hayes thought for a long moment. "Technically, Mrs. Anderson is still married and should return to her husband. But if she fears for her life, she has the right to petition for legal separation on grounds of cruelty. It is rare, and it is not a divorce, but it would give her legal protection. In the meantime, I can make it clear to Mr. Anderson that any attempt to take his wife by force will result in criminal charges." It was not everything they had hoped for, but it was something. Clara filed the petition that very day, with Logan standing beside her as a witness. Marshal Hayes sent word to Robert Anderson that his wife was under the protection of the territorial law and that he was to stay away from her pending the court's decision on her petition. "How long will this take?" Clara asked. "Could be months," Hayes admitted. "The territorial judge makes his circuit every few months, and these cases are not usually a priority. But in the meantime, you have legal standing. You are not a runaway wife anymore, Mrs. Anderson. You are a woman seeking legal protection from an abusive husband." They rode back to the ranch in tense silence. Logan could see Clara was struggling with fear and hope in equal measure. That night, as they lay together in bed, she finally spoke. "What if Robert does not care about the law? What if he comes anyway? Then I will be ready." Logan pulled her close. "But I think Hayes put enough of a scare in him. Robert is a bully, and bullies tend to back down when someone stands up to them. I hope you are right." For the next several weeks they waited. Logan kept his guard up, but no one came. The spring turned to summer, and they fell back into the rhythm of ranch work. Clara's petition slowly made its way through the legal system, and Marshal Hayes sent word when he heard anything. In June, they received news that changed everything. Robert Anderson was dead, killed in a bar fight in Nevada City. Apparently, he had been drunk and had started a fight with the wrong man, someone with a faster draw and better aim. When Logan told Clara the news, she did not react the way he expected. She did not cry or celebrate or show any emotion at all for a long moment. Then she sank down into a chair and put her face in her hands. "I used to pray for this," she said quietly. "In the darkest moments, I would pray that he would just die and set me free. And now he is gone and I feel—" "What do you feel?" Logan asked gently, kneeling beside her chair. "Relief. Guilt for feeling relieved. Anger that it took him dying for me to be truly free." She looked up at Logan with tears streaming down her face. "Is that wrong? Should I feel sad that my husband is dead?" "You feel what you feel," Logan said, wiping away her tears. "There is no wrong way to grieve, even when the person you are grieving is someone who hurt you." Clara nodded and leaned into him, letting herself cry. Logan held her and let her process all the complicated emotions that came with suddenly being free after so long being trapped. The legal implications of Robert's death were significant. As his widow, Clara was entitled to his property, which included the saloon and a substantial amount of money he had saved. She could have taken it all, moved to a big city, and lived comfortably for the rest of her life. Instead, she sold the saloon to its manager, kept enough money to make some improvements to Logan's ranch, and donated the rest to a charity that helped widows and orphans in Nevada City. "I do not want his money," she told Logan when he questioned the decision. "I do not want anything that reminds me of him. This ranch, this life we are building, that is what I want." With the legal complications resolved, Logan and Clara were finally free to make their relationship official. In August, they were married in a simple ceremony in Virginia City with Marshall Hayes and a few of Logan's friends as witnesses. Clara wore the blue dress Logan had given her at Christmas, and Logan wore his best shirt and a new vest Clara had made for him. "I, Clara Anderson, take you, Logan Michael Miller, to be my lawfully wedded husband," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I promise to stand by your side in good times and bad, to be your partner in all things, and to love you for as long as I live." Logan repeated his own vows, his voice rough with emotion. "I promise to protect you, cherish you, and honor you for all my days. You brought light into my life when I did not know I needed it, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that you chose to hide in my barn that cold November night." Clara laughed through her tears, and Logan kissed her as their friends cheered. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, ready to build the life they had both dreamed of. Clara threw herself into improving the property, using some of the money from the sale of the saloon to buy more cattle, better tools, and materials to expand the cabin. Logan protested at first, not wanting to take anything that came from Robert, but Clara was insistent. "This is not his money anymore," she said firmly. "I earned every penny of this by surviving him, and I am going to use it to build something good, something that helps us create the future we deserve." The next few years were the happiest of Logan's life. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts, growing from a modest homestead to a thriving operation. They hired a few ranch hands to help with the work, and Clara became known in Virginia City as a woman who was fair but firm, someone who did not take nonsense from anyone. In the spring of 1874, Clara told Logan she was pregnant. He was terrified and thrilled in equal measure, worried about the dangers of childbirth, but excited about becoming a father. Clara seemed calm and confident, more ready than he was for this next chapter. "We are going to be good parents," she told him when he expressed his fears. "We both know what it is like to suffer, and we will make sure our children never have to experience that." Their son was born in December of 1874, a healthy baby boy with Logan's dark hair and Clara's hazel eyes. They named him Samuel, after Logan's father, and Logan held his son for the first time with tears running down his face. "I never thought I would have this," he said, looking at Clara with wonder. "A family, a real family." "We built it together," Clara said, tired but glowing with happiness. "Everything we have, we built together." Samuel was followed by a daughter 2 years later whom they named Grace, then another son, William, in 1879. The cabin had to be expanded twice to accommodate their growing family, and the ranch continued to prosper. Logan and Clara worked hard, but they also made sure to take time to enjoy their life together, to remember how lucky they were to have found each other. Clara never forgot where she had come from or how close she had come to losing everything. She became an advocate for women in difficult situations, quietly helping those who came to her with nowhere else to turn. Some she found work on the ranch, others she helped get to family in other territories. Logan supported her efforts completely, proud of the way she turned her pain into purpose. The years passed quickly, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Samuel grew into a tall, serious boy who loved working with the cattle. Grace was spirited and independent, always asking questions and challenging the way things were done. William was the youngest and the most sensitive, with a talent for drawing that surprised them both. In 1885, when Clara was 34 and Logan was 40, they sat on the porch of their expanded cabin and watched their children playing in the yard. The ranch stretched out around them, prosperous and beautiful, a testament to everything they had built together. "You ever think about that night?" Clara asked, leaning against Logan's shoulder. "The night I hid in your barn all the time," Logan admitted. "I think about how different my life would be if I had sent you away, if I had not been willing to take a chance on a stranger." "I was so scared that night," Clara said. "I thought I was going to die out there in the cold. Then you found me and you looked so fierce, and I thought maybe you would be just as bad as Robert. But then you were kind, and you made me feel safe for the first time in years." Logan pulled her closer. "You changed my life too, you know. I thought I wanted to be alone, that I was better off without complications. Then you showed up and made me realize that what I really wanted was someone to share my life with. You made me better, Clara. We made each other better." She turned and kissed him softly. "We saved each other." They sat there as the sun set over the Montana mountains, surrounded by everything they had built and everyone they loved. The lonely mountain man and the desperate woman who had hidden in his barn had become partners, lovers, parents, and best friends. They had faced down danger and fear, had fought for their right to be together, and had created a life that neither of them had dared to imagine was possible. Their story could have ended in tragedy, with Clara dying on the road or being dragged back to her abuser, with Logan spending the rest of his life alone. But instead, it became a story of hope and healing, of two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and chose to build something beautiful from the ashes of their painful pasts. As the stars came out overhead and their children's laughter echoed across the ranch, Logan and Clara knew that every hardship they had endured had been worth it. They had found love in the most unexpected way, and that love had transformed both of their lives forever. The years continued to pass gently. Samuel grew into a young man who shared his father's love of the land and his mother's fierce sense of justice. When he turned 20, he took over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, allowing Logan and Clara more time to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Grace, true to her independent nature, decided at 18 that she wanted to attend a teaching college in Helena, and Logan and Clara supported her dream despite their worry about her being so far from home. William surprised everyone by developing a talent, not just for drawing but for the practical application of his artistic eye, becoming a skilled carpenter who built beautiful furniture and structures around the ranch. In the summer of 1890, Samuel married a young woman named Mary from a neighboring ranch. Logan and Clara threw a celebration that brought together neighbors from miles around. As Logan watched his son pledge his life to the woman he loved, he felt Clara squeeze his hand, and knew she was thinking the same thing he was, that love was worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. Grace returned from college in 1891 with a teaching certificate and immediately set about establishing a small school on the ranch for the children of their workers and neighboring families. She had inherited her mother's determination and her father's steady patience, making her a natural teacher. Clara would sometimes stand at the window of the schoolhouse, watching her daughter teach, and marvel at how far their family had come. On a warm evening in late September of 1892, Logan and Clara celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. Their children had arranged a surprise gathering, and the ranch was filled with friends, neighbors, and the people whose lives Clara had touched over the years with her quiet generosity. Samuel stood up to make a toast. "My parents have shown me what real love looks like," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Not the easy kind that happens when everything is perfect, but the hard-fought kind that survives trials and comes out stronger. Ma used to tell us that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments we think might destroy us. She and Pa proved that every day of my life." Grace followed with her own words. "Ma taught me that being strong does not mean never being afraid. It means being afraid and doing what needs to be done anyway. She taught me that kindness is not weakness, that standing up for what is right matters more than being comfortable. And Pa taught me that a good man is one who keeps his promises, especially when keeping them is hard." William, who was less comfortable with public speaking, simply raised his glass and said, "To Ma and Pa, who built a home worth coming back to." That night, after everyone had left and the ranch was quiet again, Logan and Clara walked together to the barn where their story had begun. It had been rebuilt and expanded over the years, but the basic structure remained the same. "I was so afraid that night," Clara said, standing in the spot where she had hidden 20 years ago. "I thought my life was over. I could not imagine a future that held anything but pain." Logan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. "And now I have everything I never dared to dream about. A husband who respects me, children who make me proud, a home that is truly mine." She turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me all of this, Logan. You gave me my life back." "We gave it to each other," Logan corrected gently. "I was just existing before you came along, Clara. You taught me how to really live." They kissed in the barn where they had first met. 20 years and a lifetime of experiences between that terrified night and this peaceful moment. The next few years brought the natural progression of a well-lived life. Samuel and Mary welcomed their first child in 1893, making Logan and Clara grandparents. They named their daughter Lily, and Clara cried happy tears as she held her granddaughter for the first time, marveling at the continuation of the family they had built. Grace met a young lawyer named Henry Matthews who came to Virginia City to set up a practice in 1894. He was immediately struck by the spirited schoolteacher who was not afraid to speak her mind. Their courtship was brief but genuine, and they married in the spring of 1895. Grace continued teaching, and her husband supported her work completely, a fact that made both Logan and Clara approve of him immensely. William, the quiet artist of the family, found his match in an unexpected way. A widow named Patricia came to Clara in 1896, seeking help, having left an abusive situation much like Clara's own past. Clara immediately gave her work on the ranch and a safe place to stay. Patricia and William formed a friendship that slowly grew into something deeper. They married in 1897, and Patricia's 2 children from her first marriage became part of the Miller family. Logan and Clara watched their family grow with deep satisfaction. They had created not just a home but a legacy of love and protection, a place where people could find safety and build new lives. In the winter of 1900, Logan developed a persistent cough that worried Clara. She insisted he see the doctor in Virginia City, and the news was not good. His lungs were scarred from years of breathing cold mountain air and working in all weather. The doctor said he needed to take it easier, to let the younger generation handle the heavy work. Logan struggled with stepping back at first. He had always been a man of action, someone who worked from sunrise to sunset, but Clara was firm with him. "We have spent our lives building this ranch, creating this family," she told him. but we also deserve to enjoy what we have built. Let Samuel run the ranch. Let our children take care of us for a change. We have earned the right to rest." Logan finally agreed, and they spent more of their time simply enjoying each other's company. They took walks around the property in the mornings, watched their grandchildren play in the afternoons, and sat together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. Clara was 50 by then, her dark hair streaked with silver, and Logan was 55 with a beard that had gone completely gray. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young woman who had hidden in the barn and the mountain man who had offered her sanctuary. "Do you have any regrets?" Logan asked her one evening as they watched the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of orange and pink. Clara thought about the question seriously before answering. "I regret the years I spent with Robert, the time I wasted being afraid. But I cannot truly regret them because they led me here to this life. What about you?" "My only regret is that I did not find you sooner," Logan said, "that we did not have even more years together." "Then we will make the most of the years we have left," Clara said firmly. "Every single day." And they did. Logan's health remained stable, not getting much better but not getting worse either. They continued to enjoy their life together, celebrating the births of more grandchildren, the successes of their children, and the simple pleasure of having built something lasting. In 1905, on a warm spring day much like the one when they had first married, Logan and Clara renewed their vows in front of their entire family. They stood on the same porch where they had spent so many evenings, surrounded by 3 generations of the family they had created together. "I would choose you again," Clara said, her voice still strong despite her age. "In every life, in every situation, I would choose you." "And I would choose you," Logan replied, "forever and always." Their grandchildren looked on with wide eyes, seeing the evidence that true love was not just something from storybooks, but something real and enduring. Their children wiped away tears, knowing that their parents' love story had shaped their own lives in countless ways. As the years continued to pass, Logan and Clara remained devoted partners. They were not without challenges. Logan's health had its ups and downs, and Clara developed arthritis that made some days difficult. But they faced these challenges the same way they had faced everything else, together. On a quiet morning in the early spring of 1910, they sat together on their porch watching the sun rise over the ranch. Logan was 65 now, and Clara was 59. They had been together for nearly 40 years, married for almost 30. "I have been thinking," Logan said, holding Clara's hand in his, "about that night in the barn, about how one moment can change everything." "I think about it too," Clara admitted. "How close I came to passing by your barn, to choosing a different direction. How different everything would have been if you had sent me away." "But I did not," Logan said. "And you did not pass by. We found each other, Clara, and we built this beautiful life together. Whatever happens from here on out, that is what matters. We found each other, and we chose each other every day since." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, fitting against him as naturally as breathing. "I love you, Logan Miller. I have loved you from the moment you offered me kindness when I had every reason to expect cruelty. And I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, Clara Miller. You changed my lonely life forever in ways I could never have imagined. You taught me what it means to truly live, to open my heart, to build something that matters." They sat there as the sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the land they had worked so hard to build. Around them, they could hear the sounds of their family starting their day, grandchildren laughing, their children calling to each other, the cattle lowing in the distance. It was a symphony of life, of continuity, of love that had spread and grown from the moment too lonely, hurting people had chosen to trust each other. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down through generations. Their children and grandchildren would tell the story of how it all began, how a desperate woman hiding in a barn had found sanctuary with a lonely mountain man, and how their love had created this legacy. But for now, in this perfect moment, Logan and Clara simply sat together and watched the sun shine on everything they had built, everything they had become to each other. They had survived poverty and abuse, fear and uncertainty, and had emerged on the other side with a love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. Their story had started with a girl hiding in a barn and a man willing to offer shelter. It had become something neither of them could have predicted: a partnership, a romance, a family, a legacy. And as they sat together on that spring morning, their hands intertwined and their hearts beating in rhythm, they knew that every hardship, every moment of fear, every sacrifice had been worth it to have found this kind of love. The lonely mountain man and the desperate runaway wife had become something more together than they ever could have been apart. They had become living proof that love could heal the deepest wounds, that kindness could change the course of a life, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as strangers in our barns. As the morning unfolded and their family gathered for breakfast, Logan and Clara walked hand in hand into the house they had built together, ready to face another day of the beautiful life they had created from that single moment of compassion on a cold November night so many years ago. Their love story was not just about romance, it was about redemption, resilience, and the transformative power of choosing to see the humanity in another person and offering them hope when they need it most. And so they lived, loved, and built their legacy together. Two souls who had found each other at exactly the right moment and had created something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. The ranch prospered, the family grew, and the love between Logan and Clara remained the foundation upon which everything else was built. They had found each other in the darkness, and together they had created light.